Welcome to Aviate Alaska. I'm back here in Ohio working on the Titan Tornado at the Titan Aircraft Factory. I didn't shoot a lot of video this trip. I got engaged in just working, and so I'm going to do a walk around of some of the work that was accomplished, and that'll be a quick update of the work that's been. The fuselage and all the remaining control surfaces and doors have all been painted. We went with a silver metallic, which turned out really nice. I installed the rudder yesterday. That was a 3-hour process. I have big, beefy hands, and they did not like fitting down in that tube to connect the rudder cable system. Overall though, once I figured it out, I used some black electrical tape on my finger to hold the nut in place, to get my hands in there and get it placed, and the rudder works excellent. I installed the caps on the rudder and the vertical stabilizer, and they turned out really nice. Did a little bit of work on the interior, waiting for the Dynon switch panels to come back in so I can wire those and get those placed. The majority of the week was spent working on the engine. It's soft placed right now. It's actually not on the bolts. It's just sitting next to the bolts just for placement and to make sure that everything worked the way that it needed to. This was a challenge for this project because there's not a lot of room in here to place the fuse box and the electronic control unit for the Rotax, along with all the other requirements for the Dynon EMS system module, which is in the back on that panel there, as well as the fuel pump and all the required accessories that go with that, the fuel filter and everything else. So everything was done kind of off of rough measurement. Tonight was the moment of truth, so I was not exactly sure the cables, all the control cables that basically come from right here and go through the firewall. There were a couple that I wasn't sure they were going to be long enough, specifically the ones that connect to the fuse box. And I'm happy to report that those actually are perfect. They fit perfect. There's enough cable clearance in there that it's going to work perfect right where that fuse box is placed. Had to design the entire coolant and oil cooler placement from scratch because the engine is different than the 912 ULS on the faceplate. So designed a mounting panel, have the metric bolts in there wire tied together. So up there's another setup on top. I built a bracket to hold that coolant line. It comes from the back and then around the engine and then up into the radiator. Built a solid bracket on top to hold both the radiator and the oil cooler, and then use the Hayden push-through brackets and rubber mounts on the bottom just to provide a little bit of extra stability. And it is nice and solid. There's no movement at all, so that worked out really, really well. Then I need to find a place for the coolant overflow, and that was the perfect spot. I also worked on the prop and got it all put back together. Ivo prop, returned it, and I got it all put back together. There's the mounting bracket for the Ivo prop brushes. I'm using the Ivo prop in-flight electric adjustable prop. This afternoon we installed the prop drive lugs onto the Rotax flange. I ordered the drive lugs from Leading Edge Airfoils and was able to install those with a little help from John. So this is the prop drive lugs. They go into the flange through the back. So I've already got most of these in place and torqued down using a star pattern starting from here and then working my way around. This is the last one here. Apply Loctite Blue 242 removable. Ivo prop instructions call for 200 inch-pounds. And that's the brake. Once it's all torqued into place, use some warranty seal, marking seal, and put that on the end of the bolt, and then onto the flange. And what that allows for is if that bolt backs out at all, that seal will break, and you'll be able to see that, and you'll know that that bolt is loose. The nice thing about this design is once the prop is put on and bolted into place, the prop face will actually also prevent those bolts from backing out any further. So I'm going to do just a fitment of the prop just to make sure everything fits the way it's supposed to. So the flange hub, I have it marked with marks to indicate where this sits per the Ivo prop instructions. Once it's fitted, if there's too much vibration, I can take it apart and then I can reinstall it, and what that will allow is for a shift to balance it out. So that fits perfect. And then when I go to finally install this, I'll put the bolts in, or the nuts in, and then screw it in and torque that all into place where it needs to go. So the way the Ivo prop works is there is a motor inside that turns a camber, and what that does is it twists a rod that's inside the blade that allows for a pitch angle change of the blade. There's two metal discs in here that translate the electrical current into the motor to have the motor run. Based on the fact that I fly in Alaska, I decided to install a thermostat for the oil system. That thermostat right there is one I ordered from Aircraft Spruce. Thermostasis is the company. That was a perfect spot, so I built a bracket for it to be mounted right there. So oil is pumped up into the oil cooler, out of the oil cooler, down into the thermostat, and then down from there back into the pump, and the pump distributes it, and then it comes back out. The thermostat will act as a bypass so that oil will not go into the oil cooler if the oil temperature is too cold. It'll just circulate through the engine and not go through the cooler, and that will definitely help during colder temperatures to make sure the oil heats up faster, and then while I'm flying in colder temperatures it'll bypass the oil cooler and not even go into the cooler. I will need, in colder temperatures, I will need to cover up the front of the radiator so the coolant temperatures will increase to a high enough temperature to be within operating range and specs. With the engine in soft place, I also had made a wing template to make sure that my clearance of the radiator and the oil cooler was enough, and it is actually perfect. I have about 1.5 inches clearance from where the back of the wing is to the radiator, and then the oil cooler actually sits high enough that it is completely clear of the back of the wing. overall, a good week of progress on the plane. Everything's painted and ready for final installation. On the next trip, I'll install the Dynon switches and get the rest of the electrical hooked up, and we will put the engine back on with the muffler system that will be developed between now and my next trip.